Love and Lies. The candles flickered in the dim light of Le Bernardin, Whitmore's most exclusive restaurant, casting dancing shadows across Sarah Whitmore's face as she raised her champagne glass. 5 years of marriage, and Michael still had the ability to make her heart skip with just a glance. His blue eyes met hers across the table, holding that mixture of intensity and warmth that had captivated her from their first meeting. "To us," Michael said, his voice carrying that quiet confidence she'd fallen for. "To 5 years of building something beautiful together." Their glasses clinked softly. Sarah noticed how the candlelight caught the silver threads beginning to show in Michael's dark hair. At 35, he was aging gracefully, each line on his face telling a story she thought she knew by heart. "I have something for you," Michael said, producing a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Inside lay an antique gold locket, its surface etched with delicate roses. Sarah's breath caught. Is this Grandmother Eleanor's locket?" Michael nodded, pleased by her recognition. "I know how much you regretted not inheriting any of her jewelry. I tracked this down through an estate sale collector." "Open it." With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the delicate clasp. Inside was a miniature photograph of her grandparents on their wedding day, perfectly preserved despite the decades. "How did you?" She couldn't finish the question, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "I have my ways," Michael smiled, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Your family's history is important to you, which makes it important to me." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This was why she loved this man. Not just for the grand gestures, but for the way he listened, truly listened, when she talked about her family. The way he understood that her connection to her ancestors, particularly her grandfather Judge William Whitmore, wasn't just nostalgia, but a fundamental part of who she was. The maitre d' appeared beside their table. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, I hope everything has been to your satisfaction this evening." "Perfect as always, Henri," Michael replied, his French accent impeccable despite having told Sarah he'd never studied the language formally. As they walked home through downtown Whitmore's gaslit streets, Sarah's hand tucked into Michael's arm, she found herself reflecting on their journey together. 3 years since that charity gala at the Whitmore Museum of Fine Arts, where she'd quite literally run into him, spilling red wine on his tuxedo. She'd been mortified, but he'd laughed it off with such charm that she'd found herself agreeing to dinner the next night. "You're quiet," Michael observed, guiding her around a puddle from the afternoon's rain. "Just thinking about us. About how lucky I am." Michael stopped walking, turning to face her under the glow of a street lamp. "I'm the lucky one, Sarah. Before I met you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You brought color into my life." It was moments like these that made Sarah's friends' occasional warnings seem ridiculous. Yes, Michael was private about his past. Yes, he had no family to speak of, orphaned young, he'd said, raised by a string of foster families. But wasn't everyone entitled to their privacy? What mattered was the man he was now, the man who rubbed her feet after long days at the courthouse, who remembered every detail she shared about her work as a junior partner at Whitmore and Associates, who spent Sunday mornings making her grandmother's recipe for blueberry pancakes because he knew they reminded her of childhood. Their townhouse on Magnolia Row stood elegant in the moonlight, its red brick facade covered in climbing ivy. Michael had surprised her with it for their second anniversary, somehow knowing she'd always dreamed of living in this particular neighborhood where she'd spent summers with her grandparents. Inside, Sarah kicked off her heels and padded to the kitchen for water while Michael checked his phone for messages. She could hear him in his study, the low murmur of a late business call. As a financial consultant, he often worked odd hours to accommodate international clients. Sarah wandered into the living room, drawn to the wall of family photographs she'd carefully curated. Her eyes moved from her parents' wedding photo to the formal portrait of her grandfather in his judge's robes. Judge William Whitmore had been a pillar of the Whitmore community, known for his unwavering sense of justice and his role in establishing many of the city's foundational legal precedents. "Your grandfather was quite imposing," Michael said from behind her. She hadn't heard him come in. "He was a force of nature," Sarah agreed. "Father says I inherited his stubborn streak. And his sense of justice," Michael added, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "It's one of the things I love most about you." They stood together in comfortable silence, but Sarah noticed Michael's gaze lingered on her grandfather's portrait with an intensity that seemed almost calculating. When she turned to look at him, though, his expression had softened back to its usual warmth. That night, as Michael slept beside her, Sarah found herself studying his face in the moonlight. There were moments, fleeting instances, where she felt like she was seeing a stranger. The way his jaw would tighten when her father, James, told his old stories about the family business. The careful questions he asked about her grandfather's most famous cases, always framed as casual interest in her heritage. She pushed the thoughts away. Every marriage had its mysteries. What mattered was the life they were building together. The following morning brought the usual routine. Michael left early for a client meeting, kissing her goodbye with a promise to pick up groceries for dinner. Sarah arrived at her law office to find her assistant, Patricia, looking concerned. "Your father called 3 times already. He sounds upset." Sarah's stomach dropped. James Whitmore never called her office unless something was seriously wrong. She dialed his number, her hands shaking slightly. "Dad, what's wrong?" "It's nothing to panic about, sweetheart." Her father's voice came through, though it lacked its usual commanding tone. "I had a small episode at the club. Doctors are running tests, but they want to keep me overnight for observation." Within an hour, Sarah was at Whitmore General Hospital, Michael having somehow rearranged his entire day to meet her there. She found her father in a private room, looking pale but alert. "Just a minor cardiac event," James said, trying to wave off their concern. "Your mother would have called it my comeuppance for all those cigars." Sarah's mother had passed 5 years ago, just months before she met Michael. The timing had always felt like a cosmic trade-off, losing one love to gain another. Over the following weeks, James's condition worsened. What began as a minor issue cascaded into a series of complications that left him increasingly frail. Michael became a constant presence at the hospital, managing logistics with quiet efficiency. He coordinated with doctors, arranged for second opinions, and somehow found time to keep both their lives running smoothly. "I don't know what I'd do without you," Sarah told him one evening as they sat in the hospital cafeteria during another long vigil. "You'd manage," Michael said, but his voice carried an odd note. "You're stronger than you know." It was during one of James's more lucid moments that the first real crack appeared in Sarah's carefully ordered world. She'd stepped out to get coffee, leaving Michael to keep her father company. When she returned, she could hear her father's voice through the partially open door, agitated despite his weakness. "Can't be here. After what we did to your family. The shame of it." Sarah froze in the hallway. Michael's response was too low to hear, but her father continued. "Thomas, I'm so sorry. We never meant for it to end that way. Your mother, is she?" "Dad." Sarah pushed open the door to find her father reaching toward Michael with trembling hands, his eyes unfocused. "Dad, you're confused. This is Michael, my husband." James blinked, seeming to return to himself. "Sarah? Of course. I'm sorry, I was somewhere else." Michael stood smoothly, his expression concerned but calm. "The medication makes him disoriented. He's been talking about old court cases all afternoon." But Sarah noticed the tightness around Michael's eyes, the way his hands clenched briefly before relaxing. That night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something that shifted the ground beneath her feet in ways she couldn't yet understand. With her father requiring constant care, Sarah took a leave of absence from work. Michael suggested they move temporarily into her childhood home in Riverside Heights to be closer to the hospital. The sprawling Victorian had stood empty since her mother's death, maintained by a caretaker, but never truly lived in. "It needs work," Sarah said as they walked through the dusty rooms. "Mother always meant to renovate, but after she got sick." "We'll restore it," Michael said decisively. "Your family's history deserves to be preserved." The renovation became Michael's project. He threw himself into it with an intensity that surprised Sarah, spending hours in the attic sorting through boxes of family documents, photographing old letters and ledgers for posterity, he said. It was while cleaning out her grandfather's former study that Sarah made the discovery. The contractors had removed built-in bookshelves to repair water damage, revealing a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a leather portfolio containing legal documents from the 1960s. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, reading by the light from the tall windows. The papers detailed a case from 1963, the prosecution of Thomas Chun, a respected accountant accused of embezzling from Whitmore Industries, the family's textile business. Her grandfather had presided over the trial. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Falsified records, hidden accounts, a clear paper trail leading to Chen's door. He'd been sentenced to 15 years in prison, his assets seized to repay the stolen funds. A newspaper clipping showed Chen being led away in handcuffs, his wife and young son visible in the background, their faces contorted with grief. A handwritten note in her grandfather's distinctive script was clipped to the final page. The Chun matter is resolved. Justice served, though the cost was higher than anticipated. The son, barely 5 years old, will carry this burden. May God forgive us for what necessity demanded. Find something interesting? Michael's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the afternoon shadows. Just old case files, Sarah said, though something made her hold the papers closer. Grandfather was involved in an embezzlement trial. The defendant killed himself in prison. Michael moved into the room with careful steps. Thomas Chun. Yes, I've come across references to that case in the other documents. Sarah looked up sharply. You know about it? Only what I've read while cataloguing the papers. Your grandfather seemed particularly affected by the outcome. There are several letters expressing regret about the verdict. He knelt beside her, gently taking the portfolio from her hands. His fingers lingered on the photograph of the Chun family. That poor child, he murmured, and for a moment, Sarah saw something raw and unguarded in his expression. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual composed demeanor. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She found herself in the kitchen at 3 a.m., laptop open, searching for more information about the Chun case. The deeper she dug, the more troubling the picture became. Thomas Chun had been a pillar of the Chinese-American community in Whitmore, known for his charity work and business acumen. His conviction had shocked everyone who knew him. The suicide had come just 3 months into his sentence. The newspaper reported he'd hanged himself in his cell, leaving behind a note proclaiming his innocence. His widow, Mary Chun, had fought for years to clear his name, but the case records were sealed. The appeal process mysteriously stalled at every turn. Sarah found a single photograph of Mary Chun from a newspaper article dated 5 years after her husband's death. She was standing outside the courthouse, holding the hand of a boy, who must have been 10 or 11. The caption read, Mary Chun continues fight to clear husband's name. The boy's face was turned away from the camera, but something about his posture, the way he held his mother's hand, seemed familiar. A sound from upstairs made her close the laptop quickly. Michael appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Can't sleep, he asked. Just thinking about Dad, she lied. He moved behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. You carry too much weight, Sarah. Your family's past isn't your responsibility. Isn't it? Grandfather always said the Whitmore name came with obligations. Michael's hands stilled. And do you think he lived up to those obligations? The question hung in the air between them. Sarah turned to look at her husband, searching his face. What do you mean? Nothing, Michael said, his expression smoothing. I'm just tired. Come back to bed. But as she followed him upstairs, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The next morning brought crisis. James had taken a turn for the worse in the night, and Sarah rushed to the hospital to find him barely conscious. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about preparations and decisions. Michael appeared as if summoned, taking charge with quiet authority. I'll handle the arrangements, he told Sarah, as she sat by her father's bedside. You just be with him. James's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Sarah with effort. My dear girl, he whispered. There's something, the Chun business, we were wrong. Don't try to talk, Dad. Save your strength. But James gripped her hand with surprising force. The evidence planted. William knew, we all knew. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What are you saying? Had to protect the company, the family name, but the cost. James's eyes filled with tears. That poor man. His family. We destroyed them. Michael appeared at Sarah's shoulder. He's delirious, Sarah. The medication. No, James interrupted, his gaze suddenly sharp as he looked at Michael. You know, don't you? That's why you're here. You've come to collect the debt. Michael's face remained impassive, but Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear? Recognition? Before she could process it, alarms began blaring. Nurses rushed in, pushing them aside. James Whitmore died at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, his final words lost in the chaos of failed resuscitation attempts. Sarah stood in the hallway, numb with shock, while Michael handled the grim practicalities with the hospital staff. I need air, she said suddenly. I'll come with you. No. The word came out sharper than intended. I need to be alone. Sarah walked the hospital corridors without direction, her mind reeling. Her father's words echoed. The evidence planted, we all knew. If Thomas Chun had been innocent, if her grandfather had knowingly sent an innocent man to prison, she found herself in the hospital's records department without consciously planning it. The clerk, recognizing her from her many visits, offered condolences. Actually, Sarah said, an idea forming. I'm trying to locate some old medical records. For estate purposes. The Chun family, they would have been patients here in the 1960s. It took some searching, but the clerk eventually produced a thin file. Not much here. Looks like the wife, Mary Chun, was treated for severe depression after her husband's incarceration. And there are pediatric records for the son. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the file. Michael Chun, age 5. The boy who'd held his mother's hand outside the courthouse. The boy whose father had died in prison for a crime he didn't commit. The photograph paperclipped to the medical record showed a serious-faced child with dark hair and distinctive blue eyes. A genetic quirk noted in the physician's notes as unusual for his ethnic background. Sarah's legs gave out. She sank into a nearby chair, the file scattering across the floor. Those eyes. She'd fallen in love with those eyes. Can I help you, Mrs. Hayes? The clerk looked concerned. No, Sarah gathered the papers with shaking hands. Thank you. She walked back to her father's room in a daze. Michael stood by the window, his silhouette backlit by the setting sun. He turned as she entered, and for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not the man she'd married, but the boy from the photograph. The son of Thomas Chun. How long were you planning to tell me? She asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Michael's expression didn't change. Tell you what? I know who you are. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Michael's shoulders dropped slightly. Do you? He asked softly. Do you really know who I am, Sarah? You're Michael Chun, Thomas Chen's son. You changed your name. You. The full implication hit her like a physical blow. Everything. Our meeting. Our relationship. It was all calculated. Michael moved away from the window, his movements careful and precise. Orchestrated? Yes. Sarah felt her legs threaten to give out again. She gripped the doorframe for support. 3 years. 3 years of lies. Not all lies, Michael said, and for the first time, emotion crept into his voice. That's the hell of it, Sarah. Not all of it was lies. How did you? Sarah's voice broke. The charity gala. You knew I'd be there. I knew everything about you. Michael's confession came in a rush, as if a dam had broken. I spent 2 years preparing. Learning about your family, your habits, your preferences. I took a job at the financial firm specifically to get invited to events you'd attend. I studied wines because I knew you were an enthusiast. I learned to cook your grandmother's recipes. Each revelation was another knife wound. Sarah thought of all their coincidental moments of connection, now revealed as careful manipulation. The locket, she whispered. Grandmother's locket. Purchased from the estate dealer your family used to liquidate her belongings. I've had it for 18 months. Sarah's mind reeled, trying to reconcile the man she loved with this calculating stranger. Why? Why go to such lengths? Michael's composure finally cracked. Raw pain flashed across his face. Because your family destroyed mine. My father was innocent, Sarah. He was framed for embezzlement he didn't commit, sent to prison where he died proclaiming that innocence. My mother spent every penny we had trying to clear his name, working herself into an early grave. I was raised by strangers, bounced between foster homes, all because William Whitmore needed a scapegoat to cover his own family's financial crimes. You're wrong, Sarah said automatically, even as her father's dying words echoed in her mind. My grandfather was an honorable man. Your grandfather was a pragmatist who chose family loyalty over justice. Michael pulled a thick envelope from his jacket. These are copies of documents I've collected over the years. Proof that the embezzlement was actually committed by your great-uncle, Charles Whitmore. Your grandfather knew it, your father knew it, and they conspired to frame my father to protect the family name. Sarah took the envelope with numb fingers, but didn't open it. So you decided to what? Seduce me? Make me fall in love with you as some twisted revenge? Initially, yes. Michael's honesty was brutal. I wanted the Whitmore family to feel the pain mine had felt. I thought if I could make you love me, truly love me, and then reveal the truth, it would be fitting justice. Your heart broken as my mother's was. Your world shattered as mine had been. Congratulations, Sarah said bitterly. Mission accomplished. No. Michael stepped toward her, and she backed away instinctively. That's just it. Somewhere along the way, the plan changed. You weren't what I expected. You were kind and genuine, and nothing like the monster I'd built up in my mind. Your passion for justice, your integrity, they were real. Don't, Sarah warned. Don't you dare try to tell me any of it was real. The first year was an act, Michael admitted. Every word, every gesture, every kiss was calculated. But then, do you remember the night your mother's cat died? You were so broken up about it, and I held you while you cried, and something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't pretending to care anymore. Sarah remembered that night. How Michael had found her sobbing over the loss of the ancient tabby that had been her mother's last link to her childhood home. How he'd held her without saying a word, just being present in her grief. I tried to pull back, Michael continued. Told myself I was losing sight of the goal. But every time I thought about leaving, about revealing the truth and walking away, I couldn't. Because I'd done the one thing I swore I'd never do. I'd fallen in love with you. Really, truly in love. The kind that makes you want to be a better person, that makes you believe in redemption. Stop. Sarah's voice was raw. Just stop. You don't get to do this. You don't get to destroy everything, and then claim love as an excuse. I'm not claiming anything, Michael said quietly. I'm just telling you the truth. All of it. Finally. Sarah laughed, a broken sound. The truth? You wouldn't know the truth if it. She stopped, struck by a sudden thought. My father. His illness. Did you? No. Michael's response was immediate and vehement. God, no. I may be many things, Sarah, but I'm not a murderer. I would never. He ran his hands through his hair. I love James. Despite everything, despite what his family did to mine, I came to love your father. He was kind to me, welcomed me. These last weeks, caring for him, they were real. Nothing about you is real, Sarah shot back. You're a ghost. A fiction I fell in love with. Then what do you call this? Michael pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. Look at these, Sarah. Really look. The images flashed by. Their trip to Vermont last fall, where they'd gotten caught in an unexpected snowstorm. Michael building a snowman, his face lit with childlike joy. Their anniversary dinner, where he'd tried to cook and burned everything, and they'd ended up eating Chinese takeout on the kitchen floor, laughing until their sides hurt. Quiet moments she'd forgotten. Michael reading in bed, absently playing with her hair. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. An excellent performance, Sarah said, but her voice wavered. You can't fake everything, Michael insisted. You can't fake the way my heart races when you walk into a room. You can't fake the panic I feel when I think about losing you. You can't fake the way you've changed me, made me question everything I thought I wanted. You're right, Sarah said suddenly. You can't fake everything. So tell me, Michael, or is it still Chin? What parts were real? Our wedding day. When you held me after Mom died. When we talked about having children. Which moments were genuine, and which were just, what did you call it? Calculated manipulation. Michael's face crumpled. I don't know anymore. It's all tangled up. The performance became the reality, and now I can't separate them. All I know is that I love you. Not as part of some plan, not as revenge, but as the flawed, desperate man I've become. And what am I supposed to do with that? Sarah's voice broke completely. How am I supposed to process 3 years of lies wrapped in maybe love? How am I supposed to trust anything you say ever again? You're not, Michael said simply. I destroyed that possibility the moment I walked into that gala with an agenda. I knew this day would come, knew that eventually the truth would surface. I kept putting it off, telling myself one more day, one more week of happiness before it all came crashing down. Sarah slumped against the wall, exhausted by revelation and grief. Her father was dead, her marriage was a lie, and everything she thought she knew about her family's legacy was tainted. What happens now? She asked. That's up to you. I've transferred all the evidence about your grandfather's cover-up to your laptop. You can do with it what you will. Expose the truth, clear my father's name, destroy your family's reputation. Or bury it all and pretend this conversation never happened. And us? Michael's smile was sad and resigned. There is no us. There never really was. Just a grieving son playing at love and finding himself caught in his own web. I'll pack my things tonight. The divorce papers are already drawn up. I had them prepared months ago, when I first realized I was in too deep. You'll be free of me. Just like that. What else is there? I can't undo the past 3 years. I can't unbreak your heart or restore your trust. All I can do is disappear and hope that someday you'll find someone real to love. Sarah watched him turn to leave, this stranger wearing her husband's face. At the doorway he paused. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, the man you fell in love with, that was the real me. The me I might have been if history had been different. The me you brought out despite my worst intentions. He just came with too much baggage to survive. After he left, Sarah stood alone in the sterile hospital room where her father had died. The envelope of evidence lay heavy in her hands. Truth and lies, justice and revenge, love and manipulation, all twisted together in a knot she might never untangle. She thought about her grandfather, the honorable judge who'd sent an innocent man to his death to protect the family name. About her father, carrying that secret to his grave. About Michael, the boy who'd lost everything and spent his life seeking revenge, only to find something unexpected along the way. As night fell over Whitmore, Sarah made her decision. She walked to the hospital's administrative office and asked to use their shredder. One by one, she fed the documents into the machine, watching the evidence of her family's crime disappear into ribbons of paper. But she kept one thing: a photograph of 5-year-old Michael Chun standing beside his mother at the courthouse. The boy who'd grown up to break her heart, but who'd maybe, just maybe, found a piece of his own soul in the process. The funeral was held 3 days later. Sarah stood at her father's graveside, accepting condolences from the city's elite. She wore her grandmother's locket, the weight of it a constant reminder of beautiful lies and ugly truths. Michael didn't come. She hadn't expected him to. That night, in the empty house on Magnolia Row, Sarah found a letter slipped under the door. Michael's handwriting, as familiar as her own. Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm returning to California, where my mother is buried. I'm going to tell her that I failed, that instead of revenge, I found something I wasn't looking for and lost it through my own design. I want you to know that I'm dropping the Chun name and legally becoming Michael Hayes. Not because I'm ashamed of my father anymore, but because that's who I became with you. The name will be all that's left of the man you loved, the one who existed only in the bubble of our life together. The house is in your name. It always was. The bank accounts too. I was never after money. Only justice. Or what I thought was justice before I learned that revenge and justice are not the same thing. I'm leaving you with one last truth. I loved you. Not past tense. Love, present and ongoing. I will love you when I'm 80 and can barely remember my own name. I will love you in whatever comes after this life. That love is the only real thing I have to offer, the only truth in a relationship built on lies. You deserved better than a ghost seeking vengeance. You deserved someone who came to you clean, without agenda, without the weight of history dragging behind him. I hope you find that person. Live well, Sarah. Be happy. And know that somewhere, a man who doesn't deserve to speak your name carries you in his heart, always. Michael. Sarah read the letter twice, then placed it in her grandmother's jewelry box alongside the newspaper clipping of young Michael Chun. Love and lies, truth and deception, all locked away together. Outside, Whitmore continued its steady rhythm, unaware of the secrets buried in its foundation. Sarah stood at her window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, and wondered if redemption was possible. For her grandfather, for Michael, for herself. Perhaps love, even love born from deception, carried its own kind of truth. Perhaps the heart could hold contradictions that the mind could never reconcile. As she prepared for bed in the empty house, Sarah felt the weight of her family's legacy settling on her shoulders. The Whitmore name, built on success and shadowed by sin. She thought of the boy in the photograph, the man he'd become, and the ghost of who he might have been. Tomorrow, she would return to work. She would rebuild her life. She would carry on the Whitmore tradition of keeping secrets buried deep. But tonight, she allowed herself to grieve, for her father, for her marriage, for the innocent man who died in prison 60 years ago, and for the little boy who grew up seeking revenge only to find something he never expected. The locket lay cool against her skin, a reminder that even false gestures could carry real emotion, that even calculated love could transform into something genuine, and that sometimes the most profound truths were found in the most elaborate lies. In the distance, a train whistle echoed through the night, carrying its passengers away from Whitmore toward destinations unknown. Sarah closed her eyes and tried not to wonder which train Michael had taken, or where his journey would lead him. Some stories, she realized, didn't have endings. They simply faded into the complexity of real life, where heroes and villains were often the same person, where love and betrayal could coexist, and where the past never truly released its hold on the present. In the morning, she would be Sarah Whitmore again, inheritor of a tainted legacy and guardian of buried truths. But tonight, in the darkness of her empty bedroom, she was just a woman who had loved a ghost and discovered that even ghosts could bleed.